Hi. Hear me? What?
I hear you.
You hear me? Okay, good. Say here. Here we go. Okay, we are in the book here, page Kuf Nun Gimel. Basar Hachi. There's a little thing here. New paragraph in the book, middle of a paragraph in the in the screen text. Ubasar Hachi. After the generation of Ravashi and Rabina. Vade Afagav, the Vade Hara Lohavas, even though Hara no longer existed. Hava Ika Pirushe V'Savroi, there were interpreters and people who gave logic, Krovin Hara, which are close to Hara. The V'Ikru, and they were called Inu Rabbanan Savurai, and they were called Rabbanan Savurai. So um, I think let's read first to what it says in the text, in the printed text. Krovino Ra Medivre HaLevi, Nero Shekamanos Shirgon Krovino Ra Lavdil Mirabashi Rabino Shu Sofa Ra, distinguishes between Rabino Rabashi with the end of Barak, Canal Sof Perches, Vador Rishon Shel Saborim, Avshalosa Ben Mara, even though they didn't have a Ra, Vayok Korov L'Dora Kodem Shadain Hosa Bara, they're closer to the previous generation. Havol, Yeshet saying she said Rak Lefi, nusach whatever samich habu sabroid mefarshe the mekarvil ra shnusach zabit the mekarvil ner machach me'ador. Okay, that's going their generation. Habu nusach tzadik iker perushe v'sabroid krovin lo ra nebi dizagampul asador azev lo chach me'ador azeh. I don't know what difference that makes. One of them is going on the people, one of them is going on their activities. Okay, not impressed by that distinction. Um, so the yeah, but he says in the on the screen, I don't know if it makes any sense. They can't argue them right prior to them. They're close to Rosh. By interpreting the laws before them, and say, they pinpoint and say, well, when that prior generation said such and such, he really meant X, Y, Z, not A, B, C, right? Hare kan hara. It turns out to be hara, right? Because the earlier generation said halacha didn't draw distinctions. These later generations draw a distinction. If I became Misha Cholkin al Harishanim, as if they're arguing and Mishanim and the early generations. Cholo man shabashash emetzuyin mi amaro min asaburoim heim. Okay. Anytime it says lo maron, that's the saburoi. I don't see that he actually says that. I don't know where he got that from because that's not in the text itself. Uh,
Okay.
okay, very nice. Maybe yes, maybe no. Savurai. The prime one of their primary purposes. Savrua. Welcome Shagamura Makshakushiyav. Anyone made Mevin Michael Kashi Gemara. When it says that when the Gemara asks question and you don't understand what's difficult. So Igdimu Savurai Mezber Poseh Milim Savrua. They add the word Savur Gon Brachas Man Vaman Av Savur the Kuyama Tova Metiv Lav the Raiso. So explain it. Tova Metiv everybody agrees, but it's not the right side. Michael Mif, my lab, what's my clickus? Him say, I ain't saying, so we'll clear Amatuma, the Cleo, he would see, but via Tzitz Ratzos. So it was pushed off in Tzibur, but not permitted, and it requires a tzitz. Chen tzchid av mabes savrua chem b'lev tzarich eged. If you love Masukah, Chule, Var Baker, it's there may similar ones. Shem zay nikroim saburoim. This is what they call saburoim. V'avaga v'dod harbi dvarim chashuvim asu barichas hagmara. You know, there are many other significant things in editing Gemara. Lo yikra l'shem sabrua shetiknu b'shas. This is what they were called. Okay. Okay. So the B'chol might have a tale, anything which was dangling. His tali v'koi, dangling and remaining. So in the if you take a look at the written text, the printed text, he says, "Toli ba'amid lo yispray shispray de'achroni ha'amorim." Anything which is not clarified by the last Amoraim. Harav Yudalf Alevi Amaro Kach Shabbatai Ein Lo Mashkalas Hadvarim. It can't say that he means he should call Seger Shabbashas Nivshul Adei Savurai that all the questions in the Shas are resolved by Savurai. Obviously, Sherira doesn't say you kash. This will be contradictory. We call it Bayish Amnu Fanei B'Teku for the question which remain for us with the Teku. Kavani Bayish Shoysa B'Yeshiva is going on questions which are in the yeshiva. There were daya, there were opinion, how to resolve them. But since there's no resolution for a Mishnah Bryce, they were left in arranged shots without a determination. The Savurai gave over their Masorah, which they had in their yeshiva from the generation of Rashi. Okay, well, that means they didn't determine on their own. But he says, it's possible. In specific cases, they determine on their own. But their style is very close to Avram Roim. And certain places the name of Saburoim are not mentioned. It's very difficult to distinguish between the primary Talmud and the addition of the Saburoim. לפי הגורם רב יצחק קייסר הלוי, בתוספת הסשירים האחרונים האלה, ממורשתם הסיבתית של המוראים, with the additional remnants, last remnants from the spiritual legacy, from the literary legacy of the Amoraim, with them nechtam ha-Talmud. Ukdivi Rav Sherira Gaon, istatem Talmuda. Okay, so so now he's going to give a list of Rabban Savurai, and he's both the text on screen and the text in the book. They go through the names and prove that there's a lot of confusion about the names. I don't particularly care about that. But,
are their names mentioned explicitly in the Talmud?
Some, yeah, a lot of them are. Sure, yeah.
Really?
Well, let's see. For example, Gaon. Rabbi Chumi, for Rabbi Yosef. So if you take a look here, he says, Rabbi Chumi, plus over there are three Rabbi Chumes, Rabbi Chumes. He brings down actually in the written text, in the printed text, one of them is man in Hay here. There are three Rabbi Chumois. One of them mentioned Psachim. Ksuvas Nazir as a Tam Rabbi Rava, so that's not it. One of them is mentioned Yuma as Vachim and Chulin as a Tam Ravina, the friend of Ravashi. And could be he's the one who's Rabban Savurai. The last one is Rabbi Chumai, who argues with Rabbi Yosef in terms of Pischei Shimoi. He says that he's Rabbi Chumai mentioned here in the Erev and Daf Yud Aleph. Okay, and Rabbi Yosef there is not the Rabbi Yosef of earlier, yesteryear, famous Rabbi of Abaye, rather Rabbi Yosef Nizkar Khan. And the Sugya Makbila Menachzom Kivanikra Abba Yossi. So these names are mentioned in the Talmud, right? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chumev, Rabbi Yosef, Rav Achoy. He's mentioned a lot, no? He says here in Vav that Levin says that in Tainis Tav Ches is a machlekes between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chai, there from the Rabbanan Savurai. Rashi says the Amoraim. Uh, 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 anyway, he's where was Rabbi Choy mi Bei Chasim. And he says here, getting back to the text, Dominam ba Mevi, Parish, says here. I don't know what Parish. Anyway, I'm reading I'm going to read from the screen text, not from the printed text. Dominam ba Mevi kem Mdina Sayam, B'tziklag u'medamna v'sansna, Rabbi Choy mi Chasim marba haki. This is a obviously a Gadita in where is it? In Gittin Zion, Amid Aleph, right? So this is with the different Gersos there, but this is evidently this Rav Choy. And there he brings down in the Zion, in the printed text, that other places where this Rabbi Choy may be mentioned, and different gersos of where he's from, Bechosim or Bechozah. So obviously, yes, they're mentioned in Shas, some
Okay.
of them. Yes, and there's some confusion because they have similar names to Amoraim.
Mhm.
Okay, so and he was for Rabbi. Going back to the text on screen, that's the special. Beit Chasim ir b'svira Nardo. He came a city called Beit Chasim, which is around Nardo, and there is Rav Ravoi. Meirov the Meforesh. Uh, I want to read what he says here in the footnote on page Kufnin Hay. Ubei Chasim have ir mishviras Nardo. Rav Levi Kosei Shakan Chelan Eitzer Rav Ravoi Mirov. Ain't come on us with Sherira going Shemochu b'Yashnik Shema. They weren't Rosh Yeshiva in those cities from which they were called. In Shamikil Loch Pumpadisa, they became Rosh Yeshiva in Pumpadisa. Mashiach Self Perik Gimel. Uluguf scores that Sherira going Kam Sham Shegumi Irshis Vos Nardo. Why is he mentioned this? Near Shirgon Munyan Khan, Moshe Salam Chias Perkud base, it was Kesher, Afilability Ashir to show a connection, even if it's indirect. Ben Nardo, Ben Yeshiva So, but Pumpadisa. Near Shirgon Nardo, Zem Pumpadisa, Shem Shichuosa. So evidently, Nardo was the early yeshiva, and Pumpadisa was the later yeshiva, and somehow he wants to show a connection. I know that's, I buy that, whatever, okay? Um, and then he goes on to Rav Rabbi Mirov, who's already not mentioned in the. No, he is mentioned. Okay, yeah. Look, it goes on here. It's going back to the text on screen. Rabbi Boy Mirov, the Price Text and Hedge, I mean, to the Oregon, it says somebody went out to be killed. Mashkino, so Court Shalabon, they give him this court is it's a carrot, but it's another word for it. Anyway, it's a crystal. Crystal shalavona, kosher yain, and a cup of wine. They should strive daito love in order to be not be lucid. Mishum shemat nu shechel oivev yain mar nefesh. Let's give intoxicating beverages people have to kill. V'tana nashim yikosh b'shleim hani esvadas so mishlehem. The distinguished women in Yerushalayim would volunteer this drug. Bringing acid in mistam b'shami. If they didn't volunteer, from who would they come? Tigam Rav Ravoy Miro Mistar Mishot Tzibor. Came from the communal coffers. Mishum Shneimar Tenu. Okay, so this is all this Rav Ravoy Miroiv. I don't know what it says in front of us in don't know what it says exactly in front of us in Gemara, but that's who it is. The Gam Rov Erosh Rav Ravoy Shivas Nadoi. Also here, this is around near Yeshivas Nadoi. The Rav Rabbi Gaon Hava, Orich Shana Tuva. And the Rabbanan say that he was actually not just the Rabban Savurai, he was later became a Gaon. Well, Gaon means, of course, the head of the head of the yeshiva in Pumbedisa. So in Pumbedisa, there are only two yeshivas, head of which were called technically Gaonim, even though we call the entire period the period of the Gaonim. But only two yeshivas where the Rosh Yeshiva was officially called Gaon sooner in Pumbedisa. And evidently, this is Rav Rubai, Ravoi was later became the Rosh Yeshiva in Pumbedisa. He says that on page Kufnun Hay. He says, Rav Rabbi Mirov, Reb Shimon Koso Kan Ima Dorshon Shav Savurai Shum Shu Pa Kfar Oz. Zay Akdem Basafa Gemara Shmevi Reb Shimon Nasa Basut Kufa. That's when that was added. Ava Malchusa B'Bedisa Sab Kufa Mucheres Yoser. But he was later on became actually Rosh Yeshiva in B'Bedisa. B'Dor Shlish Savurai in the third generation of Rabban Savurai. Okay, so the Ayin Bir Dibra Maskul Veherek B'Shanim. That is on page Kufnin Vav. Baruch Shani Tuva. It says first he says that Shagon Hayat Torzak Kam B'Chein Alon L'Chor Shalom Komo Neish Derek Klau Shach Rosh Yeshiva V'Tkufas HaGo'enim L'Lam Ayin B'Yirein Perek Yugim Amud Reish Chabei So they were Matzal Gaon, where I assume he's going to say that they already started using the Gaon at least retrospectively for Rosh Yeshiva who were earlier than the official period of the Goinim. Even though they were from period Rabban Savurai, they were Rosh Yeshiva in these yeshivas. Verechash b'shanim Rav Alei Mitzayim b'tzedek shuvshirgom as kis idiyazos shichor museres. He explains. He mentions this point of information seems to be superfluous. Yashe mashin yerkestin in order to resolve that it seems like a contradiction. Sheikvar ir tzadi gretz. Shkachli b'shirgom as Rabbi Avoy v'dorishin shel Savoy. Includes me the first generation of Sabrayim Ilalon, Pergim Amudri Choresh Labeis, Roshemoso, Bepirush Achar, Dora Sheni, Sabrayim after the second generation of Sabrayim. With Ravina, who are Ravina Rav Simona. Happy Ruptono Pashut. The resolution is simple, but Siruson is youth. Paul Rabbi Avoy, Echam Medorishan Sabrayim. He will operate as one of the first generations of Sabrayim, Shish Mosei Madain, whose current Talmud's names are still mentioned in the Talmud. And they see him at Talmud, before the end of the Talmud. Moshe Mucham is Zeshe Muska B'Sen Janal, Hakach. He only became the actual titular Rosh Yeshiva only after the earlier Rosh Yeshiva to the first Rosh Yeshiva, evidently in Pumbedisa. Okay, back to the text on screen. Several svaras in Bergmar, which are even from later rabbis, the second generation, evidently, of Azar Rabban Savurai. Ravina ve Rav Simuna, where they're mentioned. It doesn't say here explicitly here.
He said they're not mentioned by name.
Yeah, where is that?
In the second column.
Okay, they're not mentioned. Okay, and we hold from the Rishonim, of course, means earlier than himself, but not really Rishonim, because Shirgon was not alive at the time period of our Rishonim. The Gemara. The Reish Isha Niknes Abakesa Minolan, everybody knows Kulu Hana Kusha Piruke, all those questions and answers the Taitz Gemara, which Gemara there resolves, which like goes on to like Daf Dalid. Rabbanan Savurai Tertzinim Kamunu, the later rabbis of the Rabbanan Savurai were the ones who actually added on to the added into the Gemara. Okay. The says here in the text on page Kufnul Ches, Rabban Savurai Basroi, the later Rabban Savurai, and he brings down here in the footnote, Midivra Doris Yishonim, Nirasha Zaydei Achrone Savurai, Shebez Dor Shlishi V'Dor Revish Savurai, Shebachrei Ravina Rav Yisrael, even later. You can see the names anywhere in the Sugas ad. Matir Avalevish coming to Hilu Rab Raboy. the who's mentioned before, I mentioned later, Ashuma Charev Inu Simuna, right? Vayorosh Mesir Dor Shlishi. Okay, who knows? We don't know. It's just a speculation. Urkasiftu, now we show Ketsa Nichta Mishnah Nichta Talmud. Okay. Uh, 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 not sure what it's saying here.
He's addressing the guy who sent the question.
Right. Well, I
So
think we just
now the
answered that.
answer that you asked, how was it all written down?
Yeah, I guess because until now we're talking about just the editing, not the writing. Talmud Mishnah lo ichtavu. The Talmud Mishnah were not written down. He says here, Livnei Ken Klamar Talmud Mishnah lo ichtavu Livnei shekazvu Rav Ashi Ravina. Mishnah lo ichtavu Livnei shekazvu Rebbe. He said even Rebbe might not have written it down. So nothing. All this is learned by Peh. Um, uh, Terutzi have a metatzin, they would resolve questions concerning about the casino peh, and they are careful to learn about peh. Avalom nischei d'chsiv, but not from written versions. Meaning matura, like it says in Sechus Torah, dvarim sheba peh yator shaylom ram b'chsav. Because Shema Piaz Vimel Karati Yitzchak Britz, it was in yesterday's parsha. V'ina ela takosei v'yatakosei halachos, you can't write down halachos, so they're not written down. There's a long note here in the printed version on page Kufnun Test. Yud Nun Epstein Kaiseb Lomar Pashut, the Dover Pashut, he says, I'm simple. Shahaf Lefi Nusach Tzadik, Nusach Tzadik, Nichtav Mishnah Talmud, they were written down. El Shloi Lomni Tocha El Baal Peh. Okay, they were written down. He says in the parenthesis, Das Ramak Damasol Mishnah Torah, they were written down previously, but they will not learn them out of the written text. Shalok mashmos of Rambam Shom, not like the Rambam seems to say they actually did learn already out of written versions. Barlin Tarma, Amud 187. Nistam Talmud, the Talmud was fixed. Musubistima sto al peh, kol yeshiva yeshiva, chol dach medor v'dor, miktsasa kosu miktsasa al peh. Some was written, and some of them was verbal. Mimeri shonim. Achlamito shel דבר הציטוט התלמודי שמביא רב שיר גאון מסכת תמורה לאמרן בכתב אין בו כדי להכריע קישה זו. It's not compelling. It's not that they're not allowed to be written down, that you should be able to learn them out of the writing. It's a parallel to the beginning of the statement there. That Torah Shebiksav, you have to read it out of the text, not say it verbally. So, but here, Avakavana here just means uh, no, he's actually learning much more literally. He's saying that it is actually not supposed to be written down, and it wasn't written down until later on. Who the asur, and now to write the halachos. That's coming shaying like so the shaying hold. Because if Shir much the same of a menuschei lo, who shall lo saw lo rak shall saw ksimus udesko Talmud. One just that wasn't written down in a orderly fashion. Af kol chacham lo kasav atzol chalakim min Talmud kidei laakel alimudo. They didn't write for them to themselves parts of Talmud in order to make it easier for them to learn. Shum isra ksiva, because it's to write. V'kamizesh lo k'divi Rambam shom. That's Reo Mavoshel and Sherachnu Arbei. So according to Shira Gaon, they didn't write down anything. Nothing till later on.
Until Ravashi?
Yeah. Till after till
until the Savurai.
Till Savurai, I guess. Okay. Till the end of the period of the Savurai.
Wow.
Yeah. He says in the Mavo he was marich on it. I don't think this. It doesn't say anything very much at all in the text on screen, but I guess um, in the Mavo he spoke about it. Looking back,
Mavo. No, we didn't learn the Mavo.
no, we did not. But I don't see where he speaks on the Mavo either.
Page Lamed Vav is the Parag Gimel.
Yeah, I don't think that does. It doesn't go by. I don't know where's market.
Page Mem Gimel.
Mm. Okay, well let's see what he says here. I'm just going to say it in English, okay? We have one where we agree with the expert researchers Epstein and Abramson that there's no compelling reason from to say from the French version that Rebbe did not write the Mishnah. It's true the Shitas Rashi, was French, was that the Talmud was not written and was not given to be written until during the days of should be Rav Ashi and Rabina, Ad Yimei HaGoyim Achronim, till the end of the last Goyim. That's Rashi Shita. Okay.
Hmm.
But it makes more sense to say the dates of Rabban Savurai they allowed to be written down. Yeah, that makes more sense. But this is not written explicitly in our Iggeres, and that which we just learned. I'm skipping what he says. The quote is nothing to do with the question of whether the Talmud was written by Rav Ashi. Even if say Rav Ashi wrote the Talmud, and Rabbi Levin says that in terms of Talmud, Rosh does not use the word wrote, but rather to fix. It doesn't have to do with our question of the Mishnah, because the Shirgon is only talking about the development and expansion of the Talmud. It's nothing to do with the Mishnah. The Shirgon is just giving us the information that the Mishnah and the Talmud, they wouldn't learn out of the books, only about Peh. But that was their learning. Learning was always about Peh, not necessarily that it wasn't written down. And this is Weiss and Epstein. We also agree with Abramson that the writing down, when it, in the Nachshonga, Nachshonaigo, and other Gainim, is not literally writing down, but rather has to do with him with fixing. But in the Mavot Nusach HaMishnah, Epstein says that Reb Shira Gaon in his Iggeres brings down that Rabbi wrote the Mishnah, and that's not depends on the version. Okay, in any event, there's a whole discussion here, which so it doesn't really determine anything. But I would say that, yeah, Corey, it sounds that at least certainly not to the later generation of Rabban Savurai was the Talmud actually fully written down. Maybe there were bits and pieces, and maybe they had more than that, and they only learned it about Peh, but certainly the text itself was fluid. And that's how the Rabban Savurai got into it.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, so we'll stop here for today because we finished the parak in both the written and
Okay.
in the both them. Okay, very good. So we'll do
All
that
right.
abundance of and later, back it off. Have a good week.
You too. Take care.